Hi everybody, welcome to the latest edition of Return of the Hack, the cybersecurity podcast from E92+. I'm your host Neil Langridge, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Adam from ZeroFox. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Looking forward to it, Neil. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for one of our returning champions as well. So appreciate you coming back. So since we last spoke a couple of years ago, things have changed. I would say it's obviously with cybersecurity, it's dynamic to say the least. But from your perspective, give us a little bit of background about your role to start with, and then kind of where you see the current threat landscape.
I appreciate it, man. It's always good to talk to you. So my role is Vice President of Intelligence. We oversee technical collection, human intelligence collection. Human intelligence meaning we integrate ourselves into the criminal environment, and to support that effort, we have substantive experts who analyze the data and pass it onto our clients, either as an ad hoc, as a preemptive warning, or maybe have a global point of view about what's going on and to kind of plug it into a current geopolitical or world event. So we do the full intelligence cycle here on my teams, and we have a worldwide footprint. So we have that cultural, on the ground kind of expertise and not just the academic side of things, which is important. Yeah. But yes, we have people that are plugged in. They've been in this space for a long time, and can maybe bring down the temperature.
Yeah.
Around some things, or maybe increase the temperature depending on what we identify. So yes, I'm surrounded by experts. I'm surrounded by people much smarter than I am, and it's an honor.
Yeah, perfect. So thanks for joining us. So I think in terms of where we've seen, and certainly I think the kind of progression from when we kind of last spoke in terms of around that, around the landscape of bad actors and what they're doing out there. I think one of the kind of key things that we've seen is probably, especially because of things like AI and ransomware as a service, barriers to entry have dramatically gone down. So I think that we've seen obviously more entrants probably on the market, but then also the rise of, I don't want to say super groups from a bad guy, but the names that we all know in terms of ransomware groups. Scattered Spider is one that's obviously been in the news recently in the UK because some fairly high profile hits. But kind of what have you seen and you and the team from more people being able to get access to be able to do bad things more easily?
Well, there are several layers to this, and it's really accelerated, I would say, in the last year and a half, maybe even about the last year and a half. We're seeing an outsourcing of risk. We're seeing a lot more shared responsibility, outsourcing of risk, with the rise of ransomware as a service, DDoS as a service. And so you have entrepreneurial groups that were, let's say, the staple of the ransomware collective gang structure. They've every time they're disbanded or shut down, certain members that have not been locked up or have not gone into hiding, branch out and begin their own version of what they had before. Yeah. And a lot of them are developing their own tools that are proprietary. And so what this does to the good guys, for example, right? Let's talk about ransomware as a service specifically. What this does is it's harder and harder to connect the dots. So if you're ransomed by a certain type of ransomware, can you definitively say it's the group? Or is it the group that's doing it? Is it the ransomware tool that's doing it? And so what that does is it floods the market with confusion when, like we talked about earlier, in the United States, for example, there are certain ransomware collectives you're not legally allowed to pay. So in the United States, it is legal and lawful to pay ransomware groups. Yep. It is not, okay? It's neither encouraged or discouraged. It's legal to pay if they are not a sanctioned group or a sanctioned named individual. You can pay ransomware to those groups. And so what happens is well, if you're using the same ransomware, but it's not the group, but the group provided, it starts to get really muddy really quick. And so we've seen the rise of this, and quite frankly, customer service is still king. The customer service around ransomware as a service is very customer service friendly. Yep. And so which makes it its own kind of unique evil and genius in some regards. So definitely an increase in those types of services. With DDoS as a service is also on the rise. And we're seeing even some people DDoSing and extortion combined, right? Like we're seeing an initial attack, and then they'll say, hey, if you don't pay us, we're going to do it again, right? And so understandably, people get wound up about it.
Yeah.
So
and I suppose that's really hard. So, kind of when we're talking about kind of attribution, I suppose the reason why organisations want to do that and we're talking pretty much post breach, post incident here, they want to be able to do an analysis, one, to be able to understand what happened and how they can improve their defences, but also potentially what happened to their data if that was exfiltrated, and potentially to make sure that there's no repercussions. So trying to work out attribution from what tools we use, what ransomware gangs we use, what bad guys, it's getting increasing. You've got to follow a lot of different threads as to what tool was used, where they've gone, but also you can't even follow a traditional kill chain now in terms of those are the standard points, because as you say, you DDoS and then it's extortion. I mean, we've got nice PowerPoints with lines that everyone follows. Are you saying that, it's more complicated than that now?
I think PowerPoint presentations are the most important thing in our industry.
No, of course. Let's not.
It boggles the mind that more people don't understand. Yeah, no, it's IT and security professionals around the world are busy.
Yeah,
and as scary things are reported in the news, as scary things happen for real to the organization or to a brother or sister organization, right? A competitor or somebody in your space. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes their brand being associated with something bad happening to it, you know? And so you have these very talented network security, cybersecurity professionals that are working in an organization who wear lots of hats. And so, when clients come to us with something that's happening, there is legitimate panic.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons. Number one, they love their brand. Security professionals love their brand. It's a very loyal class of workers,
right,
who work in security. You sign up for not sleeping, you sign up for weekend work, you sign up for taking more condensed holidays rather than right? You kind of sign up to being on call a lot. And so and when people above you or in other organizations who are not they didn't train for this, this is not their thing, it's scary. And so all that comes down to a handful of professionals in an organization, and so it's good to have let's say perspective on this from somebody outside the organization, right? To come in with that expertise, that context, enlightened context, hopefully to put things at ease. And so, yes, it's complicated, but it's complicated to us in the cybersecurity industry because we need to understand it.
Yeah.
Right. But when we talk about it, when we visually represent what's going on, when we relay the information, it's important not to talk to them in a way that's not going to make anyone feel even more scared.
Yeah.
Right. Or we don't want anyone to feel any kind of way other than, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
For example, recently, we saw something happen where it was a DDoS extortion attempt, which was fascinating intellectually to me and my team. But the bad guys conducted a quite remarkable DDoS attack. We were commissioned by the organization to go out and do a couple of interesting things. It's a very bright organization, European-based. We put together how much it would cost to do this as a service. They claim to be somebody, a very scary group that's in the news. Right. Turns out we came back with, it's not that group. They're using that group's name. They're doing something in the name of a scary group that everybody knows about. To extort. This group doesn't extort. They're politically motivated. The group whose name they're invoking is a politically motivated group. They're not extortionists. Right. And so, it's getting strange out there. You've got people wanting to assume other identities to get paid more, and the original groups who are also already muddy and murky enough as it is with alliances and allegiances. And is it really them? Is it not really them? It gets muddy, and it's muddy on purpose. And at the end of the day, we don't want people to be scared of their own shadow.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes we're actually, as an industry, maybe we're kind of not helping ourselves, or the media isn't, because obviously there was a big report recently about the biggest data breach ever, 16 billion records. But from what it seems, that's not a new data breach. That's just a collection of lots of data breaches, kind of sticky plastered together and gone. Now it's a new big thing. But it was on the front page of lots of media, and I've seen lots of stories about it, and that's going to scare everybody. And interestingly, it's like, it's organisations that were involved in the first breach having their brand reassociated back again when they've not necessarily done anything wrong. So there's probably a fair degree of panic. Now, getting a few people out there to be able to be overly cautious and go, I better change my password again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So maybe there's some good things come out of it. Correct. But there's people being reassociated with a whole thing, and then just creating just generally more FUD out there when actually it's not a new thing. I don't even, and I don't even know. I don't think there's a bit of uncertainty as to what group is behind claiming that that they did this data breach. It's all just more noise and uncertainty and fear.
Let's talk about that for a second. We have some proprietary access to this situation. Right. Number one, it wasn't a breach. It was a misconfigured server on which there were about 16 billion credentials that were derived from several botnet malware stealers.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's a conglomerate of different logs that have been known, likely recycled. And so it wasn't a breach. It was a misconfigured server, likely, that was storing this information.
Yeah.
And so I'm value judgment aside, when things are reported a certain way, people are understandably upset and scared and nervous. And number one, it was disclosed by researchers. It wasn't disclosed by, this data is not anywhere that we know of in any credible deep and dark web marketplace or forum or private groups. And so it always sounds like, when I was in the government service, we used to say that, sometimes we felt like a classified CNN.
Yeah.
Right. U.S. policymakers wanted to know things as quickly as a 24/7 news cycle with no accountability for what they're saying.
Yeah.
Can report.
Just say it. Yeah.
Yeah. And quite frankly, sometimes their sources are quicker, and you know what I mean. So, this in this particular case, and this has been happening a lot recently. Our industry publications are rushing to print things that sounds scary.
Yeah.
And what happens is it works everyone up into a panic. And, we are all on the same team. We're on the side. We're the good guys, right? Yes, we have economic competitors, right? I get it.
Yep.
And these publications are good publications, for the record. These are very good publications. But it's too bad. It's too bad that when things are written a certain way, it causes a lot of anxiety within our client base and within our ranks in the companies that we all work for. And then we sound like, well, it's actually not that bad. Then we sound weird. We sound like, oh, you guys are making light of this? It's like, no, I'm not making light of it. 16 billion is a lot.
Yeah.
16 billion unsecured, 16 billion people's information on a misconfigured server is a big deal.
Yep.
But it's not a breach.
Yep.
Right? And so, but yes, this is another interesting thing about our industry is that we are always having to justify our existence.
Yep.
Because bad things do happen to good people.
Yeah.
And there's a saying, at least in Washington policy-making circles, right? I don't know what it's like here. I can imagine it's similar. That there are no such thing as intelligence successes. There are policy successes and intelligence failures.
I think that's pretty universal.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and it is. And I think that kind of like one of the discussions has kind of been kind of topics have been talked about quite a lot is around supply chain now and digital supply chains, whether it's physical supply chain. But again, we've seen some breaches where there have been quite high profile breaches where it's been could be credential stuffing, but it's also sometimes been supply chains where organizations have had a data breach and lots of records have been stolen. But again, it's not down to them, it's down to their supply chain. From a threat perspective, is the do you see the bad criminals, are they just like whatever is best for us, or do they take into account what could cause the most mess? Those guys are high profile, but those guys are actually easier to get into, but we know it can hit there, and that's going to create a wave of noise and bad publicity and going to cause more problems. So do they strategically think about that, about where people sit in the supply chain, where there are vulnerabilities, but you can effectively light a fuse that's going to go along, create the big bang, and they're still going to get what they want?
That is an interesting question, and I've thought a lot about this, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but so there are two words that we say in the government space a lot. It depends. Yep. But so I'm going to answer the question as if I'm going to stay in my lane in terms of like my expertise.
Yep.
So when you're dealing with a Russia-based or Russia-sponsored organization, or a Russia-trained or a Russia-allied entity, it's never one thing. Russia-allied entities, criminal groups, intelligence groups, they don't do things for one reason. It's multi-layered.
Right.
When you're on the diplomatic circuit and you meet a Russian diplomat, he's not just a diplomat. He's probably 3 or 4 other hats. He wears 3 or 4 other hats, right? So it's a multi-layered phenomenon. So, and you also have to know that Russia-allied groups are, generally speaking, almost always, they're a part of an intelligence operation. In the Russian Federation, an intelligence operation has several goals. 1, embarrass.
Yep.
2, enrich the group. 3, bring down the prestige of the adversarial country by attacking what Russia would consider a national brand.
Right.
Okay? And so these criminal groups, largely, there is some sort of cooperation, right?
Yep.
And so yes, they are going to enrich themselves because the data is amazing.
Yep.
It's fresh. It hasn't been circulated much. And so it provides the person with hands on keyboard, or the group with their hands on their keyboards, an opportunity to enrich themselves.
Yep.
Moreover, the people with their hands on their keyboards get prestige in the criminal sphere and also get to return their dead mouse to their master.
Yep.
Right? Who can bring back the biggest dead mouse? Okay.
Yep.
And so it's not as simple as they're criminals breaking into things. They are, but they're also not.
Yep.
So they go in, they cause confusion, they get civilized, law-abiding people who are regulated, who follow the law as much as they can, tied up in knots. We start to overthink it, and at the same time, we begin to think things like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. Yeah. How powerful is this? That we have to be careful, right? And so I would say, please don't mistake brazen behavior for competence.
Yep.
And so the Russia-based criminal class is different than other, let's say, independent entrepreneurs based in other societies and countries.
Yeah.
It's different. And so it's not simple. And what can you do as an organization? We get asked a lot, well, what can you do to protect against this, right? And it's not straightforward. It's not easy. But understanding, I think the first thing is to understand that that they are politically motivated, they are financially motivated, and they are motivated to protect their domestic standing. The regime in the Russian Federation wants to protect their domestic standing.
Yeah.
And so the way you exude greatness is by picking on brands that are overseas and are associated with pro-Ukraine comments, pro-NATO comments, what they perceive to be disrespectful, air quotes, comments against the Russian Federation. So it's tricky. Everything's related, and they never do it for one reason.
Yeah. And is it getting more blurred? I mean, I think as well, we're going to see, obviously there's other countries that we know, kind of North Korea is a very more specific agenda. It's just currency, and a bit more monetary based maybe probably on that. But obviously there are significant other conflicts going on everywhere. Are we likely to see that a little bit more kind of like from, from certain nations kind of not going from turning a blind eye to actually kind of more tacit approval of having organizations in their criminal underworld kind of, adding on that more political layer? Are we likely to see that? And that's going to create, obviously, even more mess and confusion.
Yeah. So, yes, we are already seeing this play out. We saw it play out in India, Pakistan. We're seeing it play out Israel, Hamas.
Yeah.
We're seeing it played out Russia, Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yeah.
We're seeing it played out everywhere. And another bit of context, just as we're looking at this, right? One way to kind of like widen your aperture a little bit is to understand that there are relationships that countries have with each other, that they're entitled to have with each other, that involve training, that involve intelligence sharing, cooperation, coordination on intelligence operations, military training, humanitarian stuff, right? So, each country has a right to have relationships as they see fit. And so when tragedy strikes, or in the run-up to a tragedy, it is not uncommon for the figurative phone call to come out and go, okay, so go.
Right.
And so people fall into line.
Yeah.
Right. Then, so you have the wave, let's say, the known groups, let's say, that are doing their thing with misinformation, disinformation. They go hack and dump operations. Okay. But then you have just excitable people that are in their sphere of influence who like attach themselves to it, right? So I'm not saying everything everybody does is done at the behest of one dictator or another. No. I am not saying that. I'm saying it's complicated, and yes, it muddies the water, which is intentional. If you always have, that's how you win. That's how you win, keeping people in their camps.
Yeah.
Is each camp can say, yeah, but have you heard? Yeah, but I read. Yeah, but this, right? So they take advantage of the self-imposed echo chambers we all live in, that we all live in, right? All of us.
Yep.
And it keeps us talking only to each other and not to anyone else. And anytime there's a truth seeker of any sort, it's hard to, what does that mean? What's the truth? What's really going on? And so, yes, we are seeing the gas pedal hit hard on all these conflicts around the world. It's getting harder. It's getting harder and harder to be able to be as objective when you're speaking about what's going on in the world, including in cybersecurity, especially in cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because even if you've got telemetry on something, what does that mean? You can make it look like you're anywhere, right? And so we're seeing this, play out big time. We're seeing cyber actors clearly taking sides politically. We're moving away from like the rabble rouser kind of 4chan troll type. They're still around.
Yep.
Like the trolls are still around. I'm not saying they're not around. But in terms of when war is happening or a crisis is happening, the effort to muddy the waters and embarrass and humiliate on all sides of any conflict is staggering.
Yeah, and they're going to be because being opportunistic means. I mean, that's one of their advantages as well, that they can move fast and adapt quickly. And I kind of an interesting thing that we talk about, and obviously what you guys do, especially, but a lot in cyber in terms of is the research and the analysis, and we produce the reports and in terms of what they're doing and what's going on. Do they, how much do they investigate kind of the other side and spot trends? I mean, I just, do these, I mean, presumably they don't send someone around, they buy them an expensive ticket for RSA. Go and have a look and see what all the vendors are talking about, because they've just come back, they've all just said AI. But I don't know what they're doing, which is pretty much the same as any of us walking around next week.
AI is the future.
It's the future. Yeah, I know it's the future. But it would just be really good to get a better understanding of just more than that. Yeah, but do they do the same? Do they do the same thing? Do they research trends in cybersecurity and look, kind of like looking at what we're doing again to find those gaps, find where there's noise, and find where there's opportunistic kind of gaps for them to be able to potentially exploit?
Absolutely, they do. And, because you have to I think about the criminal world as a mirror image of the law-abiding world, right? And so they are held to supply and demand. They're not doing it, it's very rare that somebody just takes up criminality just to hemorrhage money.
Yeah.
So unless you're sponsored by a government, but you're still getting paid, right? So I would say that, they definitely watch. They watch us. They read the news. They watch what we say, what we do, how we talk about things, what we talk about. Are we speaking about things a certain way? They keep a very close eye on things. They comment on articles that people in our industry, that write and author and podcasts and stuff. And so, the criminal world is very engaged in geopolitical issues and things that are going on. For example, I'm going to say buzzword, even though it is cool. Let's talk about AI for a second.
Yeah.
The way that AI currently is being marketed in the dark web. So number one, AI, if you want to do bad AI right, it's expensive, right? It's expensive, right?
Yeah.
To do these things. So right now, what we're seeing is simply them saying, hey, hire me and I can embarrass anyone, right? I will splice together audio, visual, everything, and I can make something ridiculous that embarrasses someone, right? We're seeing AI being used on around things that we probably shouldn't talk about, but the super duper dark parts of the dark web are also using AI for disgusting, incredibly uncivilized reasons. So, and the third way that we're seeing AI utilized by the entrepreneurial criminal class, at least in dark web circles, is they're building tools that use AI, language learning, all that stuff, to check their code. So evil ChatGPT, for example, right? Like an evil ChatGPT. And so they are getting more sophisticated and they're trying to cut costs and they're trying to get better. And so that so far is what is happening, at least in entrepreneurial criminal circles, is how they're utilizing AI. But again, it's to make money.
And that's the end of part one. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to tune in. Coming shortly will be part two of my conversation.